spoken about it many, many times, and I remember it vividly, absolutely vividly. A friend of mine decided that we're going to do a corporate triathlon. I worked for a bank in financial advice, and he said, Jace, hey, we're going to do a corporate triathlon, which was all the rage back then. I didn't know what a triathlon was, but he said, hey, we're going to do a triathlon. And the distances were like a 300-meter swim, 12K bike, and I was a 3K run. I was drinking and smoking, but I thought, I can do a 3K run. That's pretty easy. So I said, yep, count me in, put my hand up. And then we caught up a couple of weeks later, and he said, hey, Jace, how you going with training? And I said, yeah, it's great. I reckon I can nail the run. He looked at me and said, well, what about the swimming and the bike? And I just went like white as a ghost. and I felt really uncomfortable, and started to feel a little bit sick. And he goes, I said, what do you mean? He said, well, what about the swim and the bike? I said, I don't know. How are you going with that? And he said, no, you're doing that. So
you'd assumed you were just doing the running part of that.
Yeah, and he said, you're going to do that. And I just felt sick to my stomach. And I processed that. He said, geez, you look shocked. I said, mate, I can't swim. My biggest fear in life is drowning. And to the point that I have nightmares about drowning, of being left out at sea, or, that's a kind of recurring nightmare.
Wow.
But I realized in that moment something, it was like a whole bunch of things, realizations had accumulated that, this was like a turning point. This was an inflection point. This was something that I couldn't walk away from. There was something I just couldn't choose the easier path. So I went, yeah, I'm going to do it. And I said it very boldly, and I walked away. Didn't feel quite so bold. And I just got to do this. So I went and bought some swimming gear, and 2 days later I showed up at the pool in Brisbane, nighttime, it was dark, sat in the car park, and I sat there for 20 minutes. There was this battle going on in my head, the voice of reason with the one that wants to take the easier path, the one that is avoiding fear. I sat there for 20 minutes, and I realized that this was a turning point in my life. It was a small decision that would have a massive impact. And often, people believe that transformation starts with one massive choice, one big, all bets down choice. But it doesn't. It actually starts with a determination, a small choice that will end up being thousands of small choices. Because every time you're faced with something that you don't want to do, or your head's going, go do that, that'd be much easier, that you need to make the choice, which is discipline. We'll get to discipline, is you need to make the choice to just, do it. And so that was how it all started. On the day, there was 150 people in the swim leg. And I was a pretty fast runner, so I boldly stood on the banks of Noosa River on the beach, got myself up the front, good position. I was going to fly into that water, which I did, and I was in first place. And then by the 50 meters into the river, where you had kind of had to turn left into the the tidal run of the river, everyone had swum over the top of me, and I was gasping for air. I was hyperventilating. I was panicking, and as you probably read, and so I kind of flipped over onto my back like a beach turtle, partly to get some air and then to see where I was. And I kind of put my head up like that and realised there was no one behind me. I was the very last out of 150, and so I just flipped over and I went again. I came out of the water dead set last, but I had this sense of it. It was 300 meters, but I had this sense of accomplishment that I faced my fear and I got through it, and the adrenaline was pumping, and hopped on my bike and powered off on that, and then I was pretty quick on the run. I went from 150th place to 10th, and I was euphoric. It was just this surge, this adrenaline that I had done this thing that I 14 weeks before, I thought that would be impossible. And that is essentially the essence of unlimited. And it's a thing, it's a phenomenon that I've observed in so many people who achieve something, accomplish something that they previously thought maybe a year before, 2 years before, 2 months before, in their mind was impossible. And that is the most dramatic and the most exciting transformation in a human being that you can witness that little lift in confidence and belief. I did this. I didn't think I could do it.
Yeah.
And that is a wonderful thing. So that kind of transformed, started to transform my thinking, and I sort of did a little bit of running in between. A couple of weeks later, and I was searching. I felt, this is it. This is going to be my thing. I challenged myself. I'd face my fear, and we all face. Well, we'll talk a lot about fears. We all face many different fears, but I hadn't let it. My fear had beaten me many times before, but on this occasion, I'd leveled up, and we were on the same ground. It hadn't gone away. In fact, 6 or 7 years later, racing my 14th Ironman, that fear hadn't gone away. I recall that mass start 7 years later, at an Ironman, 1,500 people, and that fear was still there, but I had the mechanism and the confidence that I knew I could overcome it. And that is life when you face fears. So